Hello, and welcome to this second lecture on monitoring and evaluation. In our last lecture, we had tried to understand as to where does research figure into an entire program cycle. We had also discussed about communication-based assessment, or as to how we do the situation analysis before the start of a program. And today we are going to have an introduction to monitoring and evaluation. Before we start, one thing that you have to understand is that we talk about monitoring and evaluation at the same goal. So are they both the same thing? No, they are not. So what we are going to today understand is the distinction between these two terminologies, monitoring and evaluation, as part of a project cycle. Now, when we are talking about monitoring and evaluation, we have to effectively think of it as an action research. If you remember, we had already discussed about the different types of research, and there we had talked about action research. So what is action research? Action research is something which is done, a research which is done in order to solve any immediate problem. So there is a particular project which is ongoing, and hence we are doing a monitoring and evaluation in order to see that the findings of the research are fed into the project itself, of which the monitoring and evaluation is going on. So hence M&E needs to be looked at as action research. So how does it happen? So first of all comes our review of literature. We find out what is the particular situation. Remember the finding out, the baseline research, the situation analysis that we do. So we do the finding out here. Then we make a plan, the strategy design, and then we make things happen. So we implement, we watch and we listen as to whether things are going in the right direction. Then we think and discuss. If things are going right, what did we do right? If things are going wrong, what did we or where did we go wrong? And hence we make changes in our plan accordingly. And the changes in the plan are again fed into the implementation level. So that's the cycle of an action research, and that is how you need to look at monitoring and evaluation. So the entire process of monitoring and evaluation situates itself within the context of an action research, and we need to look at it from this perspective. So what is monitoring? Monitoring is the collection and analysis of information about a project or program undertaken while the project or program is ongoing. So monitoring is done when the project has started. So it happens simultaneous to a program cycle. It is the collection and analysis of information about a project or program, and this collection and analysis is undertaken while the project or program is ongoing. It is the regular and systematic collection, analysis, reporting and use of information about programs, policies and services. So it can be about programs, policies or services, but understand and emphasize on two words here. It is regular. So monitoring is not an one-time affair. It is regular and it is systematic. So it happens at regular intervals, and those regular intervals are decided systematically. So it's not random, it's not abrupt, it is regular and it is systematic. So there are specific positions within a particular project cycle when the monitoring happens. It is the monitoring which is the analysis and reporting and use of information about programs, policies and services. Hence, monitoring is also called as process evaluation. Because it happens simultaneous to a project cycle, hence it is also called project evaluation. Monitoring of a program or intervention involves the collection of routine data. It is the collection of routine data that measure progress towards achieving program objectives. So, as we are going ahead with a particular project. Now, let us take a look at this graph here. What does this graph show? It shows in the y-axis the program indicators, and here is the time. That means in the x-axis we have time, in the y-axis we have the program indicators. Now, why program indicators? Because when we are doing a particular campaign, obviously it is about bringing a particular change in a particular direction. Now, that particular change that we intend to bring about obviously can be measured through certain indicators. That means we want an improvement in the vaccination rate, we want an improvement in the institutional delivery, we want an improvement in we want a decline in the maternal mortality rate or the infant mortality rate, we want an improvement in the school enrollment ratio, we want an decline in the school dropout rate. So there are certain indicators against which my particular project is being implemented, and I am looking at a change in the indicators. So I now, as for in coronavirus, I want a decline in the number of people who want to get out of homes. Okay, so I have a communication campaign, and if I see that now people have stopped violating, or lesser number of people are violating the lockdown, or more number of people have started washing hands more frequently, so those are my indicators. So I am doing a particular communication campaign in order to bring about certain behavior changes, and there are indicators against which I am going to measure the success or the failure of my particular intended campaign. So these are the indicators. Okay, so this is the start of the program, and that's where the indicators are at the beginning of the program. And after I have introduced my campaign, the communication campaign, this is the improvement in the indicators. So this rise in the indicators, that a positive rise in the indicators. So monitoring of a program or intervention involves the collection of routine data that measure progress towards achieving program objectives. So monitoring tries to ensure that the particular project is moving in the required direction, that there is a progress. So that's what is being monitored. It is used to track changes in program performance. So if I see that something has gone wrong, so I told people to encourage doctors by clapping hands, but then people came out of their homes and they forgot about social distancing. So now I correct it. So next time when I am telling people to light the diyas, I tell them that you have to do it while maintaining social distancing. You should not come out of home. So that's a correction. I committed a mistake the first time, because I did not mention it very specifically. I just told people that come to your veranda and start clapping or making sound with your thalis and chammach and all of that. But then people took it in a different way. There was a miscommunication and they went out into the roads, did processions and forgot all about social distancing. So next time when I am giving another such task, I am constantly mentioning and I am constantly reiterating that this task has to be performed from your home. You are not supposed to compromise on social distancing. You are not supposed to come out of your homes. You are supposed to stay in your homes and light your diyas. So that's a correction which is happening, and it is used to track changes in program performance over time. Its purpose is to permit stakeholders to make informed decisions regarding the effectiveness of programs and the efficient use of resources. So that means the communicator, if the monitoring tells me that the communication did not work correctly, so now the person who is going to communicate has made a change in the messages. So that is one of the stakeholders. There might be, in a larger campaign, there might be more number of stakeholders. So its purpose is to permit stakeholders to make informed decisions regarding the effectiveness of programs and the efficient use of resources. So monitoring evaluates performance. So it tries to evaluate the performance of a particular campaign. So as it is going on, I am evaluating whether the campaign is going in the right direction or not. It is done internally. Now, who is doing the monitoring? The monitoring is usually done by the people who are involved in the implementation of the program, because it is about trying to see as to whether the program is going in the right direction and bringing about changes wherever required in the strategy in order to ensure that it goes in the right direction. If there are any mistakes, to correct those mistakes and feed it into the plan. The improved plan is implemented. So it is done internally. Most often it is done internally by the people who are managing the particular project. So it is a continuous and ongoing process. It continues along with the implementation of the program. It's not a one-time affair. Requires collection of data at multiple points throughout the program cycle. So throughout the program cycle, there are decided phases and are decided in the beginning of the campaign itself as to what are going to be those instances when I'm going to collect my data. What are going to be those multiple points where I'm going to collect my data. That is also planned. That again is not random or haphazard, as I mentioned earlier. That what are those multiple points is already decided in the beginning of the planning itself, that the monitoring is going to be done at A, B, C, D points of the campaign. During the timeline of the campaign, these are going to be the points at which I am going to do systematic and regular monitoring. Monitoring helps determine if activities need adjustment. I have already mentioned this, that if there are certain activities which are not going in the right direction, I can adjust it because I am doing continuous monitoring. I'm trying to see the effectiveness of my campaign. So hence, through monitoring, I can make changes or adjustments or reappropriate the different strategies that I have initially adopted according to my monitoring. It supports management of risks. So if there are risks which are involved, so whenever I see that there is something which might go wrong, so I can manage it. The example which I gave right now in terms of the sounding of the thalis and the lighting of the diyas, so there are risks involved. In the first stage there were certain failures and those were corrected again in the next phase of it. Usually involves counting, tracking and collecting. That means it involves in monitoring and say, okay, how many number of people have now started doing it? So is this the rate at which if it goes, then we are going in the right direction. So I'm trying to monitor that whether all my campaign is going in the right direction. I have asked people to maintain social distancing. Are people actually maintaining social distancing? Is my rate of infections coming down as far as the COVID-19 is concerned? If I take a more common example, so I wanted increase in the number of vaccinations, the polio vaccinations, so have the numbers actually gone up? If I'm looking at hand washing, so are people using the right technique of hand washing? So what are possible? So it involves counting, tracking and collecting data at regular intervals of time. So this is monitoring. So this is monitoring. Now we try and understand what is evaluation. So evaluation is systematic and impartial assessment of expected and achieved accomplishment. Okay. So this is systematic. Okay. Again, it is impartial assessment. So now here comes the point. It is impartial assessment. So when I am doing my monitoring, it was being done internally. Now here in evaluation, it has to be impartial. So I have to ensure that the assessment of my project is impartial. Of expected and achieved accomplishment. That means before I started my project, I had certain expected objectives, that this is the change that I am going to reach at the end of my project. I had certain expectations. And against those expectations, I have made certain achievements. So an evaluation is an assessment of this as to what was expected and what I have achieved vis-a-vis the expectations. Evaluation is periodic, retrospective assessment of an organization, project or program that might be conducted internally but preferably by external independent evaluators. So that clarifies how am I going to maintain the impartiality of evaluation. It is preferably conducted by external independent evaluators. So evaluation is also called impact assessment. If monitoring is called process assessment, evaluation is called impact assessment. So you might be wondering that periodic, that is also periodic, this is also periodic. But then this happens at the end of a particular phase. So if my particular campaign is a 3-year campaign, so I would have evaluation at the end of year 1, evaluation at the end of year 2 and evaluation at the end of year 3. So that's the reason when it can become periodic. But if like it's a single phase, it doesn't have multiple phases, it doesn't have multiple stages, the entire campaign, so then obviously there is going to be only one evaluation at the end of it. So that's the reason it is said it is periodic, but it is retrospective. That means it is not happening simultaneous. I cannot make any changes or corrections in the project. It is retrospective after the particular phase or after the particular entire campaign or project is over. It is retrospective. It is not simultaneous. It is not concurrent. It is retrospective assessment. So evaluation measures how well the program activities have met expected objectives. I mentioned this earlier. And or the extent to which changes in outcomes can be attributed to the program or intervention. Now these are two different things and you have to understand it very clearly. So evaluation, first thing, measures how well the program activities have met their expected objectives. So in the beginning of the program I had certain objectives. That means I have to achieve this percentage of reduction in something or this percentage of increase in something. So I had objectives. So evaluation, in my impact assessment, I have to assess that whether I have achieved it or not. I had objectives, so against my objectives, vis-a-vis the objectives, what have I achieved? So if mine was, my expectation was getting a 15% increase or 50% increase in school enrollment, if I have to see that whether I have achieved 50% or I stopped at 45% or I have exceeded my expectation. I expected 50%, I have got 70%. Okay, so evaluation measures how well the program activities have met expected objectives and the extent to which changes in outcomes can be attributed to the program or intervention. Now, whether the changes that I observe or the increase or the decrease in the indicators that I see in the field are due to the project or it is due to something else. Whether there has been a incentive provided which is independent of the entire project for school enrollment. Like if there is suddenly, I started my project to improve the school enrollment ratio and then suddenly there is a particular incentive which is given by the government which is not planned into my program, that every family which enrolls their child into the school is going to get 1,000 rupees. So suddenly there is going to be a surge in the school enrollment. So that has got nothing to do with my particular project. So how this change which has occurred in school enrollment, which was also my project, this particular increase in school enrollment cannot be attributed to the particular project objectives that I have done, the interventions that I have carried out. Okay, so I have to understand that how much of the changes can be attributed to the particular project that I have implemented. Now here look at this particular slide. So changes in program outcome, that's here, or the indicators, that is here in the y-axis, again the time, the program start, the end of the program. Now look at this here. So with the program, this is how the indicators have moved. Now certain changes are normative, that means some changes are going to occur anyways over a period of time. So this is where probably the indicators would have moved under normal circumstances. Obviously this is not going to be straight like this. Changes do occur in the society as a normal process. Even without a particular campaign, certain changes do occur. So you see that inflation of this particular graph, that is because the changes are occurring on their own. So evaluation is going to tell me, or the impact is this, the difference between without the program and here with the program. This is the impact of my program. This particular change here can be attributed specifically to the particular campaign that I have undertaken. This is where lies my success, if at all. This is what I have achieved. So this is what is going to be evaluated. This is the impact of my particular program, which comes because of, and which change can be attributed only to the program. So evaluation assesses the overall value of the program. It assesses as to how this particular program has been of value. It is done externally. It is a one-time activity. It requires baseline data, requires a control or comparison group, requires planning. Now, to understand this as to why it requires a baseline data, why it requires a control or comparison group, why, let us again go back to the previous slide. Now, if I have to understand that the change in the indicators are to be attributed to my program, then I need a particular group of people who will not get, or who will not be privy to the particular communication campaign that I am introducing. So in this context, I need two groups of people in order to assess this, that the changes that are being observed in the field situation are due to the particular project that I have implemented. So I need a particular group of people who have not been exposed to the communication intervention that I have initiated. Now, what is that group concerned? If you remember, we had discussed about experimental research. I hope you remember about experimental research, where we have two groups, the control group and the experimental group. The control group, which does not receive the intervention, and the experimental group, which receives the intervention. Then at the end of the time, we try and assess that what is the change in the experimental group and what is the change in the control group. And the change which occurs in the experimental group can be attributed to the particular intervention that I have initiated. So in this case also, that's the reason we are saying that requires baseline data. That means, first of all, I need to know what was the baseline before the entire campaign began. So which will be same for both the control group and the experimental group. The baseline data as to from where we start, we have to assess the baseline data. That means as to what was the school enrollment ratio for both the groups of people, for both the villages, where in one village I am going to do a communication campaign on school enrollment, in another village, the control group village, where I will not do my campaign on school enrollment. So I require the baseline data of both the villages. So I then require a control or comparison group. So in one of the villages, the control village, I will not introduce my campaign, and in one village I will introduce my campaign. That will become my experimental group. So then at the end of it, when I will measure the school enrollment in both the villages, the control village and the experimental village, I will be able to attribute the increase in the school enrollment to my communication campaign, because there has been no improvement in school enrollment in the control village, but there has been an improvement in school enrollment in the experimental village. So it requires baseline data of both the villages, and it requires a control or comparison group in order for evaluation to be performed, and it requires a lot of planning. You see, to think about all of these beforehand, that I need to have another village, I need to do my baseline data, this is how I am going to assess my impact, this is how I am going to measure it, these are going to be the indices. Whether suddenly if the government introduce a particular campaign, how am I going to take record of that? So it requires a lot of planning. evaluation requires a lot of planning. So evaluation essentially tries to answer these questions. Is a program, policy or service relevant? That means, is it relevant for the particular context within which I am implementing it? Is it relevant for the people? Is it appropriate for this particular group of people? Does it suit the priority of the target group? So if the priority of the target group lies elsewhere, that means they are more concerned about health issues, they are not concerned about school enrollment, then it does not suit the priority of the target group. So I have to understand that whether it suits the priority of the target group. Is it effective? Whether it achieves the result. That means I had certain objectives in the beginning of the program. So does it achieve those results? Is it efficient? That means whether it achieves those results at a reasonable cost. So in my strategic planning, I had made a particular cost assessment. I had made an assessment of the time that is going to be required. So is it efficient? Has my entire project been efficient? Did I achieve my target within, did I achieve my objectives within the expected time frame? Did I meet the objectives according to my expectations? And what has been the impact? Has it made a difference? The entire intervention that I have introduced, has it made a difference? Has there been an impact? And is it sustainable? So in many cases what we observe is that after a particular campaign is executed, the changes are not sustainable. The moment the project is withdrawn, the entire changes kind of fall, or there is no further sustainability of the particular change that we have achieved. So any project which does not achieve sustainability practically is a failed project, because the moment the support of the project is withdrawn, then the project is going to fail. The changes are not going to continue. The behaviors are not going to be sustained. So the moment my communication support is withdrawn, if the changes do not sustain within a particular community, then the project practically is a failure, because you cannot be giving support to a project for the entire life of a particular community. It doesn't happen like that. So the changes have to be sustainable. So evaluation also tries to assess this. So now let us come to a very basic comparison between monitoring and evaluation. So monitoring is an ongoing activity which analyzes the progress in planned activity. It's an ongoing process. And evaluation assesses the efficiency, impact, relevance and sustainability of the project's action. So it is that is ongoing. Now monitoring is about tracking, evaluation is about in-depth assessment. So it assesses all the different phases, how much investment is done and what we have achieved out of it. Monitoring collects data at multiple points of time, and in evaluation data is collected at intervals or at the end of it. Monitoring is usually done internally, evaluation is done by external evaluators. Monitoring provides information for evaluation. Evaluation provides information for planning, because I need to plan my next campaign. So it tells me that where the planning went right, where the planning went wrong. So monitoring provides insight to management. That means the people who are responsible for the management of the program. And evaluation provides insight to donors and stakeholders. That means the stakeholders who are there. So they will understand, okay, this project has been implemented, was it effective for us? Or the donors will understand that we have invested so much. Did it bring about the changes which were intended within that particular group of people or that particular community? Monitoring is usually quantitative. Evaluation can be both quantitative and qualitative. So here we are able to understand that monitoring and evaluation are two distinct processes that happen along with a C4D program cycle, and it is important that we figure it out into a program cycle right in the beginning as to how and when am I going to do my monitoring, how am I going to do my evaluation. So that is decided right in the beginning. So if I go back to my previous lecture, I believe you would be now in a better position to understand that why we are looking at M&E right in the beginning of the pyramid as well as here towards the end of the pyramid. So monitoring and evaluation is something which happens, which needs to be planned right away in the beginning. I might be doing it at regular intervals of time throughout the project cycle. At the end, the evaluation happens, but the entire planning, the entire incorporation of the plan for monitoring and evaluation needs to be done right away in the project, beginning of the project. So much so that it is said that when you are creating the budget for a particular project, you have to include it into the budgeting of a particular project also, and 5 to 10% of the entire budget of a particular campaign has to be for monitoring and evaluation. So that's how important it is. If there is 100 rupees being spent, so 5 to 10 rupees needs to be spent on monitoring and evaluation. So that is what is the importance of monitoring and evaluation in a particular project cycle. So I'm hoping that you are now in a better position to understand what is the significance of monitoring and evaluation. I'll quickly take you over through the slides that we have discussed till now, and there are a few check the progress questions, and I would want you to go through the check the progress questions and see that whether you are able to answer those questions. These are for yourself. You check it and then you please get back to me with the answers. So here are a few questions for you. So answer the following questions to see how much you know about this topic. So monitoring is sometimes referred to as evaluation, impact evaluation, process evaluation, performance evaluation. The question should be really easy for you and you should be able to answer these questions. Take your time, answer the questions, and please get back to me with your answers. So see you again with the third phase of the lecture. Till then, please take care of yourself, stay home and stay safe. Thank you.